I work as a road construction laborer. One day earlier this year in 2019, I was in southwestern Kansas, just a few miles from Colorado and Oklahoma borders. We were closing a main highway for stripe removal to allow the county to restripe it. The day was going slow. The water grinder truck was overheating and having a few problems, and I found it my turn to be the flagman since I was a new hire to this company. The fields around me seemed to be empty farmland and pastures of emerald and amber grass. There were hills and large segments of trees. I couldn't see how far back they went, but they were thick. There was a hole in the electric barbed wire fence next to me. Well, a few hours into the day, I feel an odd sensation and look in the direction it feels like it's coming from, and see a large black dog running through the field near the trees, maybe 100 yards away from me. I don't think anything about it though. Later, the owner of the property comes out to fix his fence, and I ask him about his dog since I couldn't tell what kind of dog it was, and he looks at me like I'm speaking Greek and tells me, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't have any dogs with me on the farm." I then told him about what I had seen, and he looked at the hole in the fence, and then the trees, and drove back up to his house, and that's how the story ends. I never heard from him again, never seen the dog, or felt the feeling again. Before my brother moved back to Texas with us, he was staying in a small town in Michigan where he worked odd jobs and that sort of thing. We got a call from him one day that he was coming back to Texas and that his house had been attacked. He did come and move back and were able to get the full story from him. Apparently, he was living with a roommate at the time, and he told us the story that they had been having some wild animal problems. He seemed to go pale when he would talk about it, and the thought always struck me as weird. He said at nighttime, both him and his roommate would work night shifts, so some animal had tried to break into the home. He said there would be claw marks all along the doorframe and what seemed to be hair all outside of the property. He said one night he got a call from his roommate when he was working and didn't know what to do. He told him to call the police, and I guess they came out and surveyed the area, but never came to anything conclusive. His roommate moved very shortly after that. It wasn't until he was off one night himself that this same wolf creature attacked his house and almost broke the sliding glass door trying to get in. It seemed aggressive and intent on killing, or at least that's what my brother said. My brother has never been one to make up hocus-pocus stories or spread bullshit. Plus, when he told us about this, the fear in his voice and face told us all that we needed to know. The police ended up getting involved again after my brother reported it while the wolf thing attacked while he was home. When they showed up, this thing was long gone. He had told us that he even faced ridicule because people thought he was making it all up. I believe my brother 100% and have no idea what he saw. But shit, man, I don't want to step foot in Michigan if it's got animals like that. I'm a single female in my 20s. I live alone with my big Great Dane. His name is Spark. He's an amazing protector, and I've had him since he was just a puppy. Unfortunately, Great Danes live to be only about 6 or 7 years old, so I hold on to the time I have with him, and it's very precious to me. Well, due to the recent events that have happened, he's now fully blind and has suffered severe brain damage. He now spends much of his days just lying around. My heart is broken, and I feel like that damn wolf thing is to curse. The thing has robbed him, an eye, of his happiness. I don't want my dog to live the rest of his days like this, but there's nothing we can do. Like I said, I live alone with my dog. I live in a pretty normal neighborhood. The houses are more spaced out, and we're a ways out of town, but it's much more quiet. My Great Dane usually hangs outside and will come in when he wants. I was inside one night cooking dinner, and I began hearing commotion outside. I hear my dog whimpering and crying, and then I hear this heavy running force. It sounded like a dog running on all fours, and then BAM! Crash right into my door. I freaked the hell out, ran to my door and opened it, and my dog bolts in past me into the house. Oh my God, I said to myself, tears welting up. My dog's face was torn open. One eye was slashed, and the other was partially hanging out of his skull, and his face looked like a mangled, bloody mess. His skull and parts of his brain looked exposed. There was blood everywhere, and he was bleeding profusely. I heard a low growl right behind me. The door was still open, and not even 20 feet away was a real-life werewolf. I mean, it looked like a wolf, but standing on its haunches, and it was humongous. It had blood all over its fur and its hands, which were huge claws. I didn't even sit there and spend too much time staring at this monstrosity. I slammed the door, trying to process everything, and I called 911, not knowing what to do. They told me to take my dog to an emergency 24-hour vet care, and I freaked out on them and told them my dog was dying. I angrily got off the phone, and in between the emotions of fear, anger, and sadness, wrapped my bloody, bleeding dog in a towel and rushed him off to the 24-hour vet service where he was luckily taken in, fixed up, and put under emergency surgery to save his life. He came out of it pretty loopy, but I could tell he lost a lot of functionality, being permanently blind and losing a lot of brain function from his attacker. After all was said and done, I don't know what the fuck I saw outside my house that night, because werewolves don't exist, so it was some sort of upright canine animal that resembled a werewolf. Whatever that thing was must have attacked my Great Dane and practically killed him. I've spoken to my neighbors since then, and they've talked about seeing a huge wolf-looking animal in the area that roams around only at night. One of my neighbors, who is an older guy, told me about how he used to have a family of raccoons come to his porch at night to eat, but in the past couple of months, they've disappeared. Apparently, many people's small pets and other small animals in the area have vanished without a trace. And then, this happens. I swear, if I see that son of a bitch in my yard again, I'm running him over with the car. Then, I'll reverse and run it over again. You don't fuck with me, or my dog. My father had a strange experience in the fall. October, I believe. This happened about 5 or 6 years ago. I believe him firmly. He's never been a nonsense, joker, or anything like that. My dad hates those kinds of people and doesn't believe in anything really. For him, to be making this up would be drastically out of character, and he'd have nothing to gain from it. This has really upset him just because he's a pretty firm atheist and doesn't believe anything outside the realm of science. He's always been pretty vocal about how bullshit UFOs, Bigfoot, demons, God, etc. is. Anyway, this is his story. He and my mother separated when I was very little, so growing up I've always moved back and forth between them. My dad ended up getting a different job that was a couple 100 miles away, and they offered to relocate him. He stuck all of his stuff in a U-Haul trailer and traveled. My father made this drive later at night because he needed to start the job sooner than later, and it is what he told me he didn't want to waste any time. He ended up coming to a more desolate section of the road in Mississippi where he needed to pull over and empty his bladder from all the coffee he had been drinking. He gets out, the cab light is on, mind you, and he's taking a piss. He starts to get a weird feeling, like he could sense something was wrong. He tells me he felt like he was being watched and that his gut instincts told him to turn around. When he did, this tall, wolf-like creature stepped out from behind his trailer. He said it was blacker than black, and it had piercing yellow eyes. He said at first glance it reminded him of something from the movie The Howling, except more evil looking, he said. My dad was still pissing when this happened, and so he's staring at this wolf creature, urinating all over himself and his feet as this thing bares its huge, sharp teeth at my dad. He told me he thought he was going to die and be eaten. Just in that moment, another car was coming around the bend behind where my dad pulled off, and the headlights from their vehicle illuminated this wolf creature. Apparently, the headlights must have distracted the creature because it turned around to face the oncoming car. My dad did not even think. He just bolted right for his truck, jumped in and slammed the doors and threw it into drive. As this was going on, apparently the car that had come around the bend saw this creature since their headlights had hit it, and it turned to face them. He said it sounded like they did the fastest brakes squeaking and doing a full 180 turn around to avoid this animal. There's no way they didn't see it. He says he only heard it because he was so focused on getting back in his vehicle. He says his penis was still out, and he had urine all over his pants and feet. Even though that's the only humorous part of the story, he said he didn't even have time to zip back up, and he was trying to get out of there so fast. This thing held onto his trailer, and as he pulled it into drive, he felt so much resistance that the vehicle was now struggling to move. He heard this thing, let out a roar, and did not even want to look in his side mirrors to see the thing. He floored it as hard as he could, and this thing let go and he flew off. Eventually, he made it to where he had to go without any damage to him or his trailer miraculously. He said that he has no idea what the fuck that thing was, but swears to this day he will never set another foot in that god-forsaken state with those things living in it. He told me, too, that after everything, if there is anything he would have ever encountered in his years on this earth, that was pure evil. It was the worst and ugliest animal he's ever seen. He just couldn't get over the feeling that it gave off. He described it as cruel. He felt this thing just didn't even want to kill him. It just wanted him to be afraid and to suffer at the hands of it. He says he doesn't know what better way to relay that but what he felt from this thing. I'm the only person he's ever told this to because he fears ridicule from anyone else. Hello, and boy, do I have a fun story for you. I have a friend who is a sheriff, and even though he gave me permission to share this, he swore to me that I was not ever allowed to tell what county he held jurisdiction in. I'll respect that and just tell you he had an interesting case. The case happened years back, but the story itself is pretty grim. He had responded to a call of an animal break-in on a more rural property. Upon arriving at the scene, there was blood, claw marks, and what he could only describe as dog hair everywhere. An older couple lived there at the house by themselves, and apparently what had happened was this large animal that the people described as looking like a demonic timber wolf, broke into the house, attacked the husband, and attacked the wife, then dragged the wife outside and took her away. The husband was clawed up pretty bad and was nearly unconscious due to blood loss. Paramedics arrived quickly at the scene and took the man to the hospital where, after several blood transfusions, he survived. He was in real bad shape. He looked like he'd been mauled almost to death by a bear. It was ugly shit. He searched the area high and low, but can only find traces of blood here and there. He called in a crew to come in and help and search, and about 700 yards away from the house, up in a tree, they found the wife. She was ripped open, disemboweled, and partially eaten. She was also up about 60 or 70 feet up in the tree, hanging loosely on a branch, or what was left of her. She was pretty mangled, and the only real way she could have been identified was because the man said that his wife was missing. Identification for her was a little bit tougher. This thing had apparently not only disemboweled her and torn off some of her limbs to eat, but also her face was torn off, and her jaw was missing. It was a gory, bloody mess. There were blood and pieces of her innards all over the tree and the ground. Now, my sheriff friend tells me when there's an animal attack like this, he has to call in a special number. He made sure to be extremely vague and couldn't give me any information on who or what this number is. He refused to give me any more information about what he knows and when to call said number, etc. Anyway, he calls this number, and the next day, a special branch of military shows up with advanced sonar weaponry. The husband, obviously, still being in the hospital at this point, and the wife being taken to the morgue. This branch of military goes about a mile or two in every direction when they showed up. They demanded that everyone from CSI to the police department leave now, and the case's jurisdiction now belonged to this branch of government. Again, my friend would not reveal the branch's name. He said there are several hidden branches of government civilians have no idea even exist and will never know about. There are branches that are purposefully hidden for specific purposes and missions that the government carries out. After leaving the scene and letting this branch go clear out whatever this thing was, he never really found out what became of the situation other than a few things. Number 1, the husband survived after his tenure in the hospital. Number 2, the house and property was seized immediately by the U.S. government, and all ownership was stripped from the husband, who happened to be the original owner. Number 3, they apparently had dealt with the issue. Lastly, my friend was told not to speak of this case to anybody for any reason. I grew up with this friend, and we're very close, and he decided to keep it for a long time. I'm one of the only people he has ever told, if not the only person, due to him potentially losing his job, or worse, his life. I understand that there are certain things he can't ever share with the world, but he told me this was so heavy on his conscience that he had to let it out some way or another. He allowed me to share it to the world under the ruling that I not release his name or county it happened in. I hope your readers find this as interesting as I have.
This happened while I was a freshman in high school in the town of Palm Beach Gardens, Florida in 1999. I lived in a townhome rental community neighboring the small housing area called Cabana Colony. My best friend Wayne lived there, and we would always have sleepovers and explore the deep woods which surrounded the back half of his neighborhood. No one knows how deep it went, but we loved it. Nothing ever did happen, just rumors of a dog-like creature that lived in the woods. But we figured it was just them parents trying to keep us away from getting lost out there, so we paid it no mind. We've been in there before, and only come across old paintball setups from people. And we've even come across a tent for some homeless person who had a bunch of porno magazines inside, which was super funny to us, but we were too scared to ever go inside the tent. One evening, in the summer of '99, I was sleeping over at Wayne's house. It was hot and humid that day. Wayne and I were up to some exploring in the woods again with our flashlights and pocket knives, looking for something fun to get into. Maybe find a cool fort or a treehouse, or something cool that we could call our own and tell no one else about. That night, we went deeper than we ever had before. It was 8 p.m. and was dark out. We ended up getting a little lost. Okay, we were really lost, but we didn't freak out about it as we assumed we would try to backtrack to find our way out back onto the streets. We heard branches snapping around us. We couldn't pinpoint what direction it was coming from. Then we heard it. The howl. It was loud. I know for a fact it was close. Whatever it was nearby and probably could smell us. We kept walking, but slowed our pace not to attract any further unwanted attention. Then we saw the body. There was a body lying in the dirt ground about 20 feet ahead of us. It was Gary, a high school dropout neighborhood bully. The guy was huge and always wanted to pick on the smaller kids. There was blood everywhere. His chest was ripped open and a large hole remained. His heart was missing from his body. Wayne leaned over and threw up, and I grabbed a nearby tree to keep from fainting, trying to catch my breath. "Oh my God, dude, Gary's dead," I said. Then I saw the eyes in the brush further ahead of us, just looking at us, staring. Its amber glowing eyes watching us like a snake does to its prey. We froze in fear seeing this wolf head with dark black hair and pointy ears just staring at us like it's protecting its food or something. I wasn't thinking straight. I just screamed to Wayne, "Run!" And we turned around and ran as fast as we could back in the direction we came. I don't think we ever ran that fast in our whole lives. Luckily, we made it back to the street where we left our bikes. The werewolf, Dogman, whatever the hell you want to call it, was real. It didn't follow or chase us, thank God. I truly believe it was just protecting its meal, or it would have attacked us or followed us. Needless to say, we never went back in those woods again. My name is George and I'm 10. My friends Zach and Robert are all in the same grade and we go to the same school in Alpine, California. We were having a sleepover at my house as I had a huge backyard which connected to the forest and had one of those above-ground pools. We planned on having pizza and soda and watch some movies or even just playing some Resident Evil on my PlayStation. That night, we were in the forest line looking for the high ground. In the words of Ernest P. Worrell from that Halloween movie called Ernest Scared Stupid, basically meaning the perfect tree. The perfect treehouse for our future fort. The sun was setting and we thought that we had just found the perfect tree to start building our newest fort. We were super excited as it wasn't too high for us to climb to bring the wood and board and nails and stuff. There was a growl that scared the crap out of us as we turned in the direction it came from to see this wolf-like creature running on its back two legs like a human hunched over across the grass, grabbing a small animal and disappearing into the bushes. It all happened so fast we couldn't even figure out what kind of animal it took. Was it some baby deer? Or a coyote? None of us knew. We were too shocked to really care at the moment. We all huddled close together and waited. Nothing. The forest was completely silent. Too silent. "We need to get back home," I mumbled to the others. Zach nodded, but Robert didn't respond. He was in shock, which was totally understandable. We slowly walked through the woods in the direction of my house. We heard cries from whatever animal the wolf creature snagged, and it sounded like it was in pure pain. I felt bad for the animal, knowing it was probably being ripped to shreds or eaten alive. We eventually made it back home and ran inside, locking the doors behind us, telling my mom what had happened. Of course, she didn't believe a word we said and laughed it off as a prank and told us, "That's what you get for being in the woods after dark." Wow. Thanks, Mom. I am a Trump-loving redneck from southern Montana. My jurisdiction also includes the Indian reservation for the Crow tribe when it comes to homicides. And that's what this is about. The FBI is also involved as 2 agents have been assigned to the case alongside of my department. For the past month, we have been continuously getting reports of mutilated dead cows from all over the area on the res. And I mean mutilated, shredded, missing pieces, blood everywhere. Something you would see in a horror movie, truly unbelievable. We have reported large dog-like footprints at the scenes of most, along with flesh-marked slashes on some of the cow hides as well. But the issue at hand is that it doesn't match any type of animal we have ever dealt with. There is a rumor spreading around from the local natives about something called a dewayo, but they don't want to talk to me too much about it. Something about the white man not believing in their culture views and all that mumbo-jumbo. I don't believe in monsters, so save me with all that crap, I tell them. So, I posted up here at the Billings slaughterhouse. It's a large facility for them cows. I'm figuring whatever is out there in this area hasn't hit this place up, and this place is huge. It just passed midnight, and it's colder than a dove up here in the tree. Yes, I can climb. Not all cops are fat, just in case you were wondering. So, I have my rifle and overnight get-ups and coat and all, scoping everything out, and nothing. The night was completely peaceful, until I heard the branches breaking across from me down below, around 20 feet or so. I looked down the lens of my rifle and couldn't believe what I saw. A huge dog-like creature creeping towards the cows outside closest to the fencing. I couldn't believe it. It looked like a huge black wolf, but it walked on its back legs just like a human does, but hunched over like some kind of dog. Its bright red eyes looked about as evil as the devil himself. I got goosebumps all over my body, and I almost lost my balance leaning forward with my rifle, watching the thing getting closer to them cows. I saw it attack at one, ripping it to shreds, blood splattering everywhere, and the cows mooed for help, and the other cows ran off in fear. This monster is real, I thought to myself. It's real, it's really real. I aimed down the lens at the creature's head, took a deep breath, and pulled the trigger. I sat back in the tree, took a swig of my little bottle of whiskey I kept in my coat pocket to keep me warm, and breathed out. Police sirens soon were heard and visible to the scene of the massacre. I joined everyone yelling out, "Yeah, I got that son of a," when I stopped in my tracks to see what they were looking at. Not the werewolf-looking monster, but some mid-20s Native American boy naked laying in the grass beside the dead cow with blood all over the place. "This can't be," I said. "I shot and killed a werewolf. I didn't kill this boy. You guys have to believe me." This was 3 years ago. I'm writing my story from my prison cell along with my bunkmate Bubba, who makes me do things I don't care to do. But at least I'm safe from that monster. That werewolf. I am a United States Navy sailor stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, on the USS Baton LHD-5. I am writing this in my journal to tell my side, the true side of what happened. If you are reading this, then I am either locked up or I am already dead. Either way, I'm screwed. Me and some buddies were headed out to our petty officer first class house down in Portsmouth for a house party. A party I never made it to. If you know Virginia, then you know it's really woodsy and green. It really is quite beautiful. I was on the 264 highway and I really had to take a pee. Bad. Like in the movie theater, but refusing to get out of your seat until it finishes bad. I'm new to this area, so I just pulled off the next exit and started driving down some dirt road with a lot of trees so I could do my thing in peace without getting caught. It was already dark out, without a single cloud in the sky. A full moon and a nice winter breeze chilled my body as I was relieving myself in the nearby bushes. Ooh. And that's when I heard the scream. It sounded like a woman, but I couldn't really tell. I used my phone's flashlight app and started to walk cautiously in the direction that I heard the scream from. I heard branches break and more screams, almost as if she was in a struggle or being attacked. I started running towards the noise, ready to save the day as my adrenaline was on full throttle at that time, when I stopped in shock at the gore. The beast in front of me tearing this woman into pieces and eating her heart right out of her chest. Her ribs have been snapped and her sternum broken into two. The creature acted like it didn't hear me approach and just continued eating. I was in total shock, too stunned to move or run back to my car. Not that I would be able to outrun this thing anyways, but what else could I even do? I am unarmed and pissing myself at this point. I see the hairy black beast stop eating and slowly turning around facing my direction, snarling with its large razor-sharp teeth, with pieces of her flesh hanging like angel hair noodles from its jaw. It started to growl at me, then it leaned up and howled into the sky. I fell back in fright and landed on my ass hard, but felt nothing but fear from what's to come. What was it waiting for? Why wasn't it attacking or eating me? I thought. I thought I'd already be dead. But it did nothing. It just stood there breathing heavy and stared at me with its evil eyes. Maybe it didn't find me appetizing. Or maybe it was my crucifix hanging on my chest. Maybe it was afraid, or there's some rules about the cross that it fears or avoids. I don't know. I'm just scared out of my mind at this point. I hid in the woods for hours writing this down in my journal. I never went anywhere without it. I know, nerd alert, but that's just me. I note everything that interests me, or now what I'm afraid of. I forgot what direction I came from, so now I have no idea where I left my car. It's now 3 a.m. and I'm freezing. There's no cell phone signal out here in the woods, and I'm hearing this creature getting closer to where I'm crouched. I don't think it could see me, but what if it can smell me? Oh God. Maybe it didn't kill me because I interrupted its meal and I was distracting it. What if now it's in the mood for a tender snack? I live in a small village in Oslo, Norway. My family is believed to be the direct blood descendants of Ragnar Lothbrok himself. Of course, there is no scientific proof in that nature, but my grandfather claims it to be true. He swears it on all the old gods and the new. Anyways, during this fall, our small village has been cursed, as there is a death almost every week amongst the men, and at least twice as many with the livestock. Last week, my neighbor was found dead in his home, ripped to smithereens on the living room floor with his chest split and his heart was missing. He had a knife in his hand, which did have blood on it, but the police couldn't find any matches to the blood's DNA, but for sure, it wasn't his. I feel our house may be next. I don't know why I am having this feeling or fear, but deep in my gut tells me that trouble is coming. The seer in the village claims the creature to be a beast, a man-eater of sorts. He calls it the Fenrir, the wolf son of Odin the All-Father, and for some reason he is punishing our village. Yet, the old tales of Fenrir, he is supposedly chained up tight somewhere by a magical ribbon made by the dwarfs, and it's unbreakable. Of course, you Christians wouldn't believe in this. It's our gods, not yours, that are punishing us. Tonight, I sent my children to sleep early in their room and I locked it closed from the outside. I just knew something bad was going to happen. If not tonight, then tomorrow, or sometime soon, but I must be ready for anything to protect my family. I sat at my wooden table drinking ale and snacking on some leftovers from dinner earlier that evening. My hand axe laid across the table in front of me, and by now I was starting to have my doubts and feeling like maybe I'm just overthinking everything and being afraid. Yes, I was drunk by the time it happened. It must have been past 1 a.m. My front door bursted open and a heavy chilling wind blew inside my home, giving me goosebumps as I almost had a heart attack by the smashing of my door. Inside the doorway was this huge black wolf with bright red eyes. It had to be at least 5 foot tall on all fours. It slowly walked inside and stopped. It was smickering at me as it stared. It then hopped on its back legs and spoke.
Good night. You have lost faith in me. You all have. It is time.
It said to me. I couldn't speak. The wolf was talking. I was in total shock. You... who? What? I mumbled.
Stop at once!
It yelled.
Don't you know me, boy?
Then there was silence. I couldn't answer. I didn't know what to say. The wolf came closer, opening its large mouth with razor-sharp teeth already bloody like I was in its first meal tonight. I grabbed my axe and thought of my children and prayed that this thing wouldn't go into their room after it kills me. But it was far too late. The large beast heaped onto my body within a blink of an eye, ripping out my jugular with its jaws. I gurgled, trying to breathe as blood drowned my airways, its heavy body cracking my rib cage and its giant claws ripping into my sides, exposing my innards. Whether I truly did deserve this death or not will never be foretold, but tonight is the last night of my life, and I hope to see Valhalla. Please, make sure my blade is in my hand when I die, so I may join my forefathers around the table with ale and hump the finest maidens for all time.